I thought it was interesting because there were also people there. You could see if you watched live online, there were also people in the quote unquote audience, if you will. But what I took away right away from her and what I am hearing from her, she's bullying the bully. And she is now taking this in a way that she's not playing defense, she's playing offense. And she's letting everyone know what she thinks of him. And she's coming across to me as a very strong leader. She's using his tactics against him. You were weak. What kind of man are you? Who would do that? You gave the Russian president COVID tests while Americans died. She started off right off the bat saying that. And to me, she was establishing her power. But the message, the bigger message, was to, I believe, and I'm not a black man, I'll pass that to Bakari at this moment, but she wanted to establish some sort of loyalty, perhaps trust, some connect with these black men who feel like she doesn't connect. I also heard, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with this. This was the beauty of it. When they started to question, the black men started to ask her questions, they were skeptical. So are you sure you're not just using me? Are you sure you're not just saying this just to say this? Yeah. And that's what they should be doing to make her stand on what she has to say and believe in what she's saying.
There's no question that Charlamagne is a friendly interviewer, but the questions that were coming at her were not necessarily coming from that perspective. Do you think she crossed that hurdle adequately for the people who want to feel like they can trust her?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't couch it as a friendly interviewer. I mean, I think you have to look at the substance of the question.
He literally endorsed her, so I think that is described as a friendly interview.
Respectfully, it was substantive. Right, and I think that, and I think it's very substantive. I think that her answers were thoughtful. I thought that she got off talking points. Even Charlamagne at one point said, how do you feel about people who say that you stick to your talking points? And she said, that's what I call discipline.
I love it.
And you just kind of go through that. It was a clear contrast. But even more importantly, when we talk about her going to Charlamagne and speaking directly to voters, you very rarely hear the fact that most of the interviews that Donald Trump does are on Fox News. Yep. Or on Harvey Levin, or on people who adore him, Aiden Ross, like people who look up to him. Aiden Ross actually showed up in like a Trump-wrapped, whatever the ostentatious truck is that Elon Musk made.
It's called a Cybertruck.
Yeah, whatever that is. That's called I have babies, I can't afford it, whatever it is. But so yeah, I mean, sometimes people go and they play home games, but the questions we received tonight were not necessarily friendly questions. They were from people, as you said, who were adiaphoros, which SAT word means fence sitter. I've been studying my SAT words for this show tonight.
Good for you.
People who have their head in the sand. And black men have been cautiously optimistic about what Kamala Harris may mean. And today I thought, and also there are a lot of people pissed off in mainstream media, because this was the best interview I thought that she's done. I thought it was the best interview.
Don't project that on us. Nobody's pissed off, okay? It was an interesting interview. Let's play more from Kamala Harris. Let's play some more from Kamala Harris.
She's tired of your mess.
Already. We're at 10:05.
She's like, I'm over
Okay, Bakari. Right. I want to play this bite because this is one of the questions we were talking about. This comes from a pastor who basically says to her, this is what Donald Trump is saying about you in the churches.
You've been criticized by him and others for your lack of engagement to the black church.
They are trying to scare people away because they know they otherwise have nothing to run on. Ask Donald Trump what his plan is for black America. Ask him. I'll tell you what it is. Look at Project 2025. He's selling $60 Bibles or tennis shoes. And trying to play people as though that makes him more understanding of the black community. Come on.
So what is Donald Trump's plan for black America, Ryan?
Well, he hasn't endorsed another platinum plan like he did last time, but he certainly has spoken of black voters a number of times, and his support with black voters is at the largest of any Republican since Richard Nixon in 1960. I think that it's not so much Trump's campaign this time has not been so much racialized, where he speaks only to black voters and only to Hispanic voters, whatever. He's speaking to the youth demographic a lot. Bakari said he only does Fox, but he's on every podcast known to man at this point. Every bro podcast, every comedy podcast. He was on with Schultz a couple days ago. It was a huge audience. So he does speak to young men, period. It's not so racialized, which I think is very, very important, because younger black voters, if you look at polls, are not as connected to the black church. They are not connected to institutionalized things within black America as older black voters are, which is, I think, part of the generational divide.
I mean, that's a fair point. I mean, Trump is doing it in a different way. Do you think it's working?
Well, look, I think he does talk about stuff in a racialized way.
In a different way.
In a different
vein, but yeah.
Where do we begin, quite honestly, whether it's derogatory names towards countries like Haiti and in West Africa, or when he was asked about the Black American Plan when he was in a black church in Detroit a couple of months ago, he immediately started talking about violence and crime. He doesn't have a plan for Black America. He is, as the vice president says, pandering to Black Americans when he talks about a gold shoe or
A Bible.
But he's not selling it to black audiences, his gold shoes or his Bibles. That's to his fans that are buying
or his
that.
mugshot T-shirts, as he says when he was in the Black.
I mean, he literally said
I mean,
that black people like me because I have a mugshot.
Yeah, so it's not. That's not a plan. That's not even a concept of a plan. That's disrespectful. That's like disrespectful. That's what I mean. It's not a plan. It's not a concept of a plan.
He did
it's
have
just,
a platinum plan, though. He did do things while he was president to Black Americans.
that's the main point
and in
right
favor
there.
of them. That's. I mean, they are.
Okay,
You're acting
so that's
as if.
his plan, the platinum plan.
No, I
Or
think
Well, he
doesn't?
did that already. Parts.
I think
of
the
it.
main point is that people have lived under his economy. And what is he going to do for Black America, for Latino America? We've seen it. Prices were lower. Housing was affordable. Inflation was low. People were safe. The border was sealed. I can go on and on and on. And all of a sudden, you're asked the question, what does he have now? People have watched what he's done, and now they're looking at Joe Biden and Kamala's economy, and they're saying, we can't survive on this. Our check doesn't go far enough, Abby. Times are tough. The border's open. People, whether you're Latino or you're a Black American, you want a sealed border too. You want to be safe at home. So they've seen that all along. So I think this notion that what's his plan, they've seen his plan and they know it's going to get better.